would agree to the offer made by the previous rep last year, which was a free loan of one chair for the month of June and a discount thereafter, and he did agree to that. Of course, there was no meeting last week, and now it's the 5th. He's out of town this week, which is why I'm here instead of him, but he said that either Monday or Tuesday, if you wanted it, he would bring it at no charge. His office is in Cedar Grove. $10. I don't know if that includes tax, but...
And just so everybody knows, give a little background, we've been talking for the last couple of years now about making grading accessible for folks that have mobility challenges. The council settled on a ramp as the means by which it would serve the greatest population. It serves different folks with different mobility challenges, including seniors with arthritis, people in wheelchairs. We looked at a lift that didn't seem to make sense, at least as a first step. The Mobi chair is, we had a presentation last year. It's a chair that could help part of the population. Those that, somebody for instance who might be quadriplegic and has no access to the water, it would allow them to go into the water and float with the assistance of somebody. It wouldn't serve everybody, obviously, those that want to swim, those who are able to swim, but it would serve, it presumably could serve some members of our community. So it's something we've looked at, and we'll look at it again. Thank you. Hey. Good evening.
Good evening. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Mr. Mayor, can you clarify what you said prior to Ms. Ringel's comments? Are you suggesting that people that have commented so far on the allegations about Mr. Ritchie should stop making comments? Are you trying to suggest there should be no more public comments on this?
Not at all. Not at all. I was talking about the council. Public can say anything in question. I'm talking about in terms of an issue that we deal with. It might make sense for everyone involved to have a third party look at the issue. That's all I was saying. But you're more than welcome to say, ask anything. Absolutely.
I just wanted to clarify that because it certainly sounded that way when you said
not at all.
allegations being made or comments being made.
No, I think it would inform the conversation to have a third party look at it, presumably. But
well, in my opinion, that would have been the first thing to do, and I think you know that. I mean, I submitted letters to both newspapers. I think it was outrageous the way this was handled, and I think that now that all of this has been said, I even saw this very sketchy anonymous letter. All of these allegations were made by you, and now you're suggesting it should go private. What has been said publicly can't now go private, and that's what I want to say.
sure, that's not what I said at all. This absolutely should be a public discussion, and I invite it, and I've invited it since the beginning. There are a lot of questions to be asked. For instance, we received today some invoices that go back 10 years, and so now there are a lot of things that we need to look at. And I'm just saying that rather than the councils put this on the agenda every week, it might benefit us to have a third party look at it.
I think I can still speak because you're responding to me even
Sure.
though I had walked away. All of that should have been done, gathering facts and information, not today, but prior to this coming up at all. This is really bad government, in my opinion.
So, good evening.
Good evening. Scott McCann, 450 Linwood Avenue. I haven't been able to find the tape of last week, but I've seen some articles and I've talked to some people. You've heard me say that the price of liberty requires eternal vigilance, and I think this is necessary. I see the fire chief is here tonight. I believe it's the fire chief back there. And I hope that there's a discussion and we get the information as to the reasons why the work was requested to be done on an emergency basis. In 1982, some years after we moved to the village, we had a fire. Fire department can have anything they want as far as I'm concerned. It's tough. And one more thing, we've talked about it. We have a saying in my family, words are like toothpaste. Once you get it out of the tube, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get it back. The people of this village require, and I think demand, that words be carefully chosen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McCann, I'd like to comment on, if you don't mind. I heard you say that you didn't see the tape, but you did read the paper. I read the paper yesterday too, which said that I had defamed Mr. Ritchie. So I went back. I take that very seriously. I don't think anyone should defame anybody else. I think it's actionable. People get sued for that, and I don't want to be sued for something that I was pretty confident I didn't do. So I did go back and look at the tape. I'm not sure what statement the press was referring to. I said, I've known Mr. Ritchie to be an honorable person. I said, I am not contesting the facts as Mr. Ritchie recited them. And I said, maybe he had a very good reason as he suggests. I then went on to say it was the principle that I was espousing, that we ought not have members of the council, whether it's me, Mr. Ritchie, Mayor, anybody on this council, have a contract with the village while serving on the council. And I said, even if it's legal, now I know it's not legal, but at the time I said, even if it's legal, and that surprised me, it doesn't pass the ethics test. Now, since then, I found it's illegal, and I'm delighted because now I don't have to go. I had suggested
Mr.
last
Rogers,
week,
you're shaking your head when he said that it's illegal. Would you comment on that, please?
I had said last week that we should consider an ordinance, perhaps, or at least a rule among the council. I'm saying for anyone on the council to have a contract with the village strikes me, anyway, as a lawyer, as contrary to Section 353. But I did not defame Mr. Ritchie, and I want to be clear, and I wouldn't. I have no reason to do that. So when you say you read the papers, let's not get the facts get in the way of a good story, and that's what we see in the papers and blogs and other things. I wish you had seen the tape.
Mr. Pucciarelli,
Mr. Rogers, could you weigh in, please? Mr.
I
McCann,
am-
if you don't mind for a second. Mr. Rogers, would you weigh in on that comment, please?
Right. I think what Mr. Ritchie wants me to weigh in on is the opinion that I gave last June with regard to the resolution that was before the council awarding a $24,000 contract to EPCO. And I'm still of the opinion that doesn't violate the local government ethics law, it doesn't violate our local ordinance. Our ordinance, I think it was left out of the record article today, but our ordinance says that no one should benefit directly or indirectly except for salary or fees established by law or by ordinance or resolution of the council. And that's what we did. And I asked Mr. Ritchie to recuse himself from that. And certainly that was, I think, the opinion that Mr. Ritchie's asking me to comment.
No, my observations are not, I have not read all the articles. I try not to. I've been very busy with some other things that are going on, but I had heard from people who had been there and spoke to me, and I'm not quoting. I'm just talking in specific, not in specifics as to this situation. What I am referring to is words have meanings. And it's like I just said. Words are like toothpaste. Once you get them out, it's very, very, very difficult to get them back, if at all. They're out there, or whatever they are, and we should be very careful because I believe that the people who live in this village expect and should demand the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome.
How you doing? Ron Forenza, 681 Ellington Road, Ridgely, New Jersey. I read the newspaper also today, and what I came to a conclusion is, if everybody knew it was illegal, the mayor, the attorney, town manager at the time, the councilwoman who voted for it also, you all should resign. Get the hell out of here. So why break his qualunes over something you guys made a mistake on? It's not Richie didn't make the mistake. He didn't even vote for it. But the town asked him to do a job that they had nobody else to do. They went to the state. He was the only guy certified for the job. They went to him and said, do the job. So if there's an extra $8,000 added on to the job, it's not Richie's fault. It's you guys' fault. You're the one who okayed the original $24,000. So why don't you get your heads together or just all just leave? That might be the best thing. That's all I have to say on that. Second of all, town garage. We're looking to move the town garage to Glen Rock, and we haven't contacted Glen Rock at the time when we started it. But what we should be looking at is, Ridgewood should say, all right, our garage stinks. We need a new garage. But let's say, hey, Glen Rock, we were going to build a garage by you. How about being our partner? How about Milton Park being our partner? The three of us, we got the land. We're going to sell our property. You guys come up with some money, and we'll have a nice garage for all three towns. That's an idea I think you should consider. I have another one, though. On the, I'll bring it up later. All right?
Thank you for those comments. With respect to your second one, it's an excellent idea. It's something we've talked about, and it's definitely something to explore, some shared services with one or more towns. Absolutely makes sense. With respect to the other issue, again, we're going to have a more substantive discussion later. It's not, though, Ron, about just last year, the $8,000. There's over 10 years of a relationship here, and so that's what we need to look at right now. Well, again, that's why I think we need to step back, take a deep breath, and sort of look at the situation for all concerned. I don't think we can forget about it. I think it's incumbent upon us to sort of, find our way through this. I really do, in the interest of good government. So, but thank you. I appreciate it. Good evening. Welcome.
Charles Keim, 124 Richards Road. Just in the interest of future good governance for the Village of Ridgewood, could you all go on record tonight, please, and just say that you will uphold the local government ethics law, which states that no local government officer or employee or member of his immediate family shall have an interest in a business organization or engage in any business transaction or professional activity which is a substantial conflict with the proper discharge of his duties to the public interest. I would like the village attorney, the village manager, and the council to state that that is our policy. On the record. And again, I wasn't here at the meeting last week. I have no interest in this. I just want future conflicts of interest to be prevented by good governance.
I appreciate the question, and I don't want to speak for everyone. I think we agree with it. We actually, the village code, the copy of the village code, which speaks to conflict of interest, which has apparently been law since the 1970s, speaks to that issue. So we're not supposed to have any business interest or...
Can we have the village attorney and the village manager state that they will uphold that in future dealings with contracting for the village? On the record.
I hope you're not implying that I have financial dealings with the village.
No, I'm saying to prevent future conflicts of interest, can we state that this is our policy?
Since the financial disclosure requirements have been in place, which I think has been at least 12 or 13 years, I have filed every single year and met all the requirements.
Do we uphold the local government ethics law or not as a village?
There's a statutory requirement to complete a form and sign off on a form, and I have done that probably for 15 years, including this year.
So in future, all contracts that the village signs will comply with the local government ethics law? Yes or no?
If I could, they definitely should, and whether or not they have in the past, we're going to take a look at that.
I'm not worried about the past. I'm talking
No,
about future.
going forward, absolutely. I think we're all committed to that, and that's what we're going to do. But
the village attorney to agree to that? If you want.
please, I just don't want to.
Well, again, I'm going to say it one other time, hopefully maybe the last one, that the award that I gave the opinion on for the $24,000 was done in conformance with the local government ethics law and our ordinance. Certainly, my position is to uphold the law and make sure that I advise the council properly. I will continue to do that.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome.
Hi. Lorraine Reynolds, 550 Windermere Avenue, Ridgewood. I saw the tape. I wasn't here. I thought it was disgraceful. But regardless of that, I have a question. I just want to clarify. From what I understand from the tape, there was a $24,000 job. Mr. Ritchie's company was the only one that was state approved. Is that the terminology you use? It was, okay. So you could have gone elsewhere, but it would have cost more money. You decided to go with Mr. Ritchie. You had a discussion with Mr. Rogers. He said it was fine. He abstained from the vote. It was a 4-0, it was unanimous. He did the job. 2 months later, something else happened. Totally, Mr. Ritchie, if you'll respond to this, was this second job totally unrelated to the first? It wasn't like the 24,000, you had installed something and that went down and you had to go fix it and you charged another $8,000. You did the $24,000 job. That $24,000 job needed a resolution from the council because it was over the 17.5. You got the resolution. 2 months later, something else total happened. The phones went down in the fire department. It was an emergency. They called him. He got a purchase order. He did the job. That is normally how things would get done. Is that correct? Because it was $8,000. If it was $18,000, then it would have had to come before the council and get a resolution. Is that correct?
There's a few issues here. One is whether an elected official or appointed official, as the code says, should be doing this type of business with the council. Let me finish, if I could.
I mean, that was already decided.
Let me, if I could, because you asked if it's normal practice. So it's not normal practice what we're talking about. It's a unique situation. What happened, though, we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and as I recollected, the initial resolution was for the fire department. And Mr. Ritchie said, no, it was later. That was a month and a half later. I subsequently, though, went back to my emails and found that a May email from Mr. Ritchie that said about the fire department phones going down. And I subsequently have checked with the fire chief. It was in May that the phones went down in the fire department, not in August. So there's some issues that we need to sort of work out around what happened and when. And so that's some of the discrepancy that needs to be sort of worked out here.
I mean, if it was an outside company that was doing two separate jobs, one was over the 17.5 and one was under, they would have only had to have gotten the resolution for the first job, the one that's over the 17.5.
Well, again, it depends. We have this thing called the change order. So if it's the same job, it should be they have to come back to the council if we're going to increase it. In fact, there was a resolution for the change order that we had a couple weeks ago to add it because it was considered the same job. Whether there was a glitch in the system, whether there was something else, we don't know, and that's one of the things we need to look into. But it still, begs the question why we needed this extra, $8,000 at the end. Because, again, my recollection, and again, I don't want to put words in the fire chief's mouth, but it was in May that the phones went down. That's what the original resolution was for. So, but again, I don't want to get into the sort of back and forth now. I mean, so they're just issues that we need to sort of resolve
Do
here.
you want to get the fire chief up here so we could just settle
Well,
this?
I think he's going to come up later.
It's a different,
I don't want to put him on the spot now, because he's coming up later, but do you
It
feel
just seems like you're lambasting Mr. Ritchie for no reason.
If you could just come up here and just sort of clarify that one point, and anything else that you think needs to be clarified. As you know, thank you, Larry, at the May 22nd meeting, we had a discussion about the fire department's needs, the phone technology, when phones went down. This is Chief Van Gore, Fire Department.
Yeah, Chief Van Gore, Richard Fire Department. I missed what you were saying.
So the question is, in last year, when the phones went down, wasn't it in May that the phones first?
Yeah, the first time they went down was in May.
And that's when Mr. Ritchie's offered to come in and do the work, put temporary phones in until we got the purchase order and all that.
Yeah, he put temporary phones in April, and then we had to design it, get the purchase order the stuff, and then it was installed in August.
Right. So again, the clarification, there was no emergency in August. It was earlier, and so that's, again, in my recollection was that's why we did the original resolution, up to 24,000.
Well, no, we waited. Once he did the temporary phones, it wasn't a big rush to get the purchase order. So that was done later. That was probably done in August sometime.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm not sure if it was before or after, but it was
Okay.
sometime in August.
Great. Thank you for your clarification. Anyway. Thank you, Chief.
On a separate note, I have a question. The Valley Hospital is in front of the planning board right now. I'm assuming, in case you didn't know, I'm assuming that eventually it will get to council. I know that Mr. Pucciarelli has said he would recuse himself, and I would like to put it on the record that Ms. Houck would recuse herself as well. I wanted to see what you had to say about it.
I don't think there's any reason for me to. I don't understand why I would. I'm just as impartial as everyone else.
Don't you feel like you have a personal involvement with Valley for the last
No different
25
than
years
anyone
of your
else in the
life?
village.
What?
No different than anyone else in the village. I don't accept a salary. I'm not currently involved.
It has nothing to do with
I have
salary.
history
It's
as a
personal
resident.
You have a personal involvement.
Okay.
Lorraine, we can
get.
get some counsel and some
All right,
advice
I
on
just
that.
wanna read you something.
Thanks for your advice.
This actually is a quote from Mr. Pucciarelli. It's actually not a quote. He put it on the patch as a statement when he was running, and he was saying why, if Mr. Forenza had won, why he would have to recuse himself. So he said, this is from, what did he say? Oh, still, this is from state law about who would have a conflict. No local government officer or employee shall act in his official capacity in any manner where he, a member of his immediate family or a business organization in which he has an interest, has a direct or indirect financial or personal involvement that might reasonably be expected to impair his objectivity or independence of judgment. So I think your personal involvement with Valley for the last 25, 30 years of your life shows that personal involvement. And that I really, truly believe if you say you can be impartial, I think you're lying to yourself. If, you know,
So in other words, you also agree that Tom Ritchie's personal involvement with Extel would preclude him from doing business with the village?
nothing to do with the other.
I'm just asking
Okay, let's
if
just-
you
everybody,
therefore
let's do
agree with the
this.
parallel.
Point of order, Gwen,
Why?
because
Because,
read Robert's Rules of Order, that's why.
okay. Anyway, point was made, thank you. Just so everybody knows, Valley Hospital proposal is on the planning board's agenda. I was there till 11:45 last night.
Me too.
And the timeline right now is, there was a effort to get this done by the end of June. I don't know if we're going to succeed with that. But then if it gets passed by the planning board, then it would come back to the council. If it does not get passed by the planning board, it would not come back to the council. So that's where we stand. But thank you, Lorraine. Thanks for
All
your
right,
point.
thank you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, welcome.
Dan Johnson, 3 Spring Avenue. I've lived in Ridgewood for 39 years, and I'm glad to see all these Extel people here tonight, applauding what I think is the biggest betrayal this village has ever had. For somebody who is now on the council, been working on jobs for the village for at least 14 years, probably a lot longer, and not letting us know. I don't think you're a criminal, maybe, we don't know yet, for what you charge, but we do know that you never told us you were doing work for the village. Not this year, not last year, not last week when you had a chance to say, well, wait, these aren't the only 2 contracts I have. I've been working for the village for 14 years. You didn't say that. That is a betrayal, a very, very, very big betrayal. And it's disgusting. I mean, it makes me feel like, what is wrong with this town? Are there other people doing what you have done? And what have you done? You have used your influence and your power.
Yeah, point of order. Can't make that accusation.
Okay, well, okay. But let us stick to the facts. For 14 years, at least, Tom Ritchie's company has done jobs for the village. Did you know that? Oh, you did? Did the council know that? No.
Yes.
Did I know that? No.
He wasn't a council member.
Were there competitive
Okay,
bids for all
please,
these
everybody,
things? No.
everybody, please. Okay. Anything else?
The financial disclosures, I mean, who knew that this was going on? Who knew even last week? And again, this is not... No.
Hey, please,
What he
please,
said
just-
last week
person at the podium has the
I'm not going to do any more
microphone.
work for the village other than these 2 contracts. He didn't say, I'm not going to do any more work for the village other than these 72 contracts I've had for 14 years. He did not say that.
Okay.
This is disgusting. It needs to be investigated. I'm not calling Tom anything other than somebody who failed to disclose a very critical fact. I'm working for the village. How hard is it for him to have said that? But he didn't. And that is disgusting.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, please, please,
Watch the
please,
tape.
from the audience,
He
Lorraine,
said
Lorraine, please.
2. He limited it to 2. But there are more than 2 if he's been working for the village, as he has, as his company has for 14 years. There are more than 2. And I really think it's great that all these Extel people are here tonight.
Please, please. Good evening, Jacques. Please, everybody, please, pay attention. Podium. Good evening, Jacques.
My name is Jacques Harlow. I live at 415 Oak Street in Ridgewood. The other day I had the chance to say in this meeting that I've lived here for over 55 years. You know, the significance of that is that a person who was 15 years old in high school would now be 70 years old. Well, most of you were children or weren't even born when I started living here. I've tried from various times to get a point across with fables, with stories, and with brute facts. And somehow, some of them don't get across. But tonight, I have 2 points to make. The first one is going to be another story. It's called If Only If. My son, Patrick, never had a chance. It was 1958. My wife, Allison, and I had just moved to Ridgewood. Allison was pregnant. We hoped for a son. We had already named him Patrick, after my great-grandfather. Then it happened. Allison stood with our 2 children, aged 3 and 5, 3 and 4, in the middle of Citizens Bank, which was then filled with tellers, officers, and clients. Suddenly, she had a spontaneous abortion. Blood covered the floor. No one helped her. She struggled with the car, leaving a trail of blood out of Citizens Bank and down Main Street to where the car was, to East Ridgewood Avenue, to where the car was. Once home, she called me. Fortunately, I worked in Paramus. It was easy to find her. The trail was clear. I called her obstetrician and told him the problem and said I was taking her to Valley. Remember, it's 1958. You can't, he said. I don't have privileges there. Take her to St. Joe's in Patterson. At that time, Valley was small,
too new, and most doctors preferred to practice in Patterson. The drive to St. Joe's was hectic. I did not know the way, and traffic was heavy. When we arrived, they rushed Allison to the operating room. She still bled copiously. She had lost Patrick. 10 minutes later, and I would have lost Allison. Allison was no longer able to conceive. There is no Patrick. No young woman in Ridgewood would suffer in the same way. A local hospital would save her life, and Patrick's. And I think this council was remiss in its challenge by the Valley Hospital, and I hope you have a better vision next time.
Thank you, Jock.
Now that I've caught your attention, I have another comment and a caveat. Mr. Ritchie has been my friend and colleague for nearly 20 years. The first time I met him was at a council meeting. The critics in the council were devastating. They were saying things that were untrue and false. Mr. Ritchie wasn't even there. He was home watching television and was appalled by what was going on, as I am appalled with the discussion here tonight about his. He came in and gave a stirring speech about the fact that the village was operating properly. Since then, I have come to know him. He was my first campaign manager. We served on the council together. And we ran together. I would call him an honorable man. And what I have seen him do in this village with his telephone company, with his small business telephone company, a really small business called telephone company that needs help all the time, is to give this village not only service, but actual money out of his own pocket, which you fail to recognize. He has been a savior in more than one instance in having the telephone operating systems in this village working properly and accurately. Back then we had critics, and their great trick was misrepresentation. If the issue was $50,000, they would come up and say $500,000, and unfortunately the press picked up the $500,000, not the $50,000. If it was $500,000, they would say $5 million, and the press would pick up the fact that it was $5 million, not $500,000. Misrepresentation steals the press and creates an image in the village that is terrible. What you have done is to defame Mr. Ritchie in a very terrible way. You have done it with innuendo and with a misrepresentation of the facts, or if you put the facts down, you don't put them in a logical order. You don't differentiate between the fact that the $24,000 was a capital expense which had to be voted by the council, and that the $8,000 was a purchase order that comes out of operating funds at the discretion or whenever is needed in order to operate this budget. It doesn't matter what you say and how you try to defend yourself. What you have done is gone on a witch hunt in which you have defamed him and you have besmirched his name, and you have probably seriously affected his small business. I have been known to have a very good vocabulary. Unfortunately, good vocabularies deal with both the sublime and the ridiculous. I don't want to deal with the ridiculous. I don't want to do it. I've looked for a number of words. I can only find one in the action of you, in this action against Mr. Ritchie, which is something that never should have come up before this council in this way, and that is that your actions have been despicable. Thank you very much.
Well, let me say thank you, though, for your first story. Seriously, for sharing your personal story with us. It was very compelling, Jacques. You only get one time. Sir, with all due respect, we have a full meeting to go. We can only do one. That's just the rule. We'll have time at the end. We'll have time at the end of the meeting. We'll have time at the end of the meeting. Please. Any other questions or comments? Again, I appreciate everybody. Please. Good evening, Len. Welcome.
My name is Leonard Eisen, 762 Boulevard. I see there's a big crowd here tonight, which I find overwhelming. And all I could say, if you people would show up more often, we wouldn't have this kind of talk we're having here tonight, because you would see how this thing evolves from week to week to week. It's terrible to read secondhand in newspaper. You're getting précis what goes on here from moment to moment. So I suggest anybody who's really interested in what goes on in this town, Ridgewood, come here on a more frequent basis so you'll know what's going on. What you see in the paper might be okay, might not, but you can't decide what to say here tonight because of what you just see in the paper. That's one comment. By the way, a new subject. I took the opportunity to call the Board of Education business office a few days ago about their telephone service, which is, as you know, separate from the one in town. And I spoke to the business office, and I found out, well, two things. Number one, they have someone on staff who's responsible for taking care of the phones and maintaining them. In addition to that, they also have a budget line, as I understand it, which runs from about $3,500 to $4,000 to cover repairs that the maintenance man on staff cannot handle. So he says he thinks that maybe answers my question. I don't know. I just spent a few minutes finding this out, but I thought I would share this with you because they're spending our money, as you know. The Board of Ed spends twice as much money as you folks are spending in this room. I don't know if many people are aware of it. The Village Council was able to keep our budget at zero growth, but the Board of Ed has raised our taxes by several $100s per household. So together, you have to pay it. And so that's what I wanted to say. And there was one more thing which I'll wait for the second comment later this evening. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Len. And thank you, everybody. Again, I know this is emotions run high, but I appreciate the civility and the thoughtfulness that are going to most people's comments. We're going to get through this somehow. We'll figure our way through this. Again, we're going to be discussing this issue a little later on the agenda. But now we're going to go to a couple of presentations we have. The first one is a proposal to bring an assisted living home to Ridgewood. Harley Cook, if you want to come up to the podium and let me do a little background for you. Harley Cook runs a company called Kensington Senior Homes, and Mr. Cook came to the village last fall. I met with him, and he asked to meet with me because he wanted to find out if I thought that Ridgewood would be receptive to an assisted living home, something we don't have in Ridgewood. And, my initial view was, yes, I think the concept would be, we'd welcome that, an assisted living home for two reasons, frankly. Because on the one hand, there are those of us who have parents maybe living elsewhere and they needed an assisted living home, and it would be nice to bring them into our community. And second, there might be seniors living here that want to move into an assisted living home, and this would give them an opportunity. So I told him I thought that, generally speaking, I thought the town would be very receptive. He said, okay, let me do my homework. He left. He came back. I think he met with Blaze or talked to Blaze Branchow for a couple times. And then Blaze and I sat down with him, and he had a much more detailed proposal then, which I won't go into now, but it's changed slightly, I think, since we spoke last. And it involves, and correct me if I'm wrong, it involves building an assisted living home and a garage on the village property at North Walnut and Franklin, as well as the parking lot to the south of that, if that's correct. So with that, Mr. Cook, welcome. And please, if you could spend a couple minutes telling us about your proposal.
Well, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about our proposal.
Is the microphone up?
Okay. Appreciate it, and I also appreciate the great crowd. I didn't expect as many people. I appreciate your being here. I'm the development partner for Kensington Senior Living, and I'd like to take this opportunity to tell you about our proposal for doing a development of assisted living in downtown Ridgewood. Let me tell you a typical story from the lives of seniors. As you know, women live longer than men. A woman usually and very typically takes care of her husband during his declining years. And then she is left alone. She's typically left alone in a large house. And she doesn't want to leave that house because of her memories, the very fond memories of raising her children in that house. But as a result, she becomes isolated. It becomes more difficult to get out. It's more difficult for her to take care of herself. Her friends are passing away. It's difficult to meet new friends, and she doesn't take good care of herself. She becomes isolated. And isolation from friends and from assistance is a major threat to health. On the other hand, socialization and assistance is essential to wellness. It's usually the firstborn daughter who says to her mother, "I think it's time we made a change. I'd like to have you move close to me where I can come visit you often." And when a senior finally comes to us at the Kensington, we see a major transformation. She's surrounded by many friends versus being at home alone. She has staff around her to care for her needs rather than struggling with those needs by herself. 24-hour nurses and visiting doctors versus the difficulty of getting out or not getting medical help. 3 tasteful meals a day, refreshments all the time are available. 2 to 4 activities a day, beauty parlor and physical therapy. After she comes to us, her family sees amazing changes. Let me read for you a letter that was sent to our executive director at the Kensington of White Plains, New York. Dear Selena, Grace, your staff member, is to be commended for the wonderful preparation of getting Mom ready for church services today. Not only was she dressed so lovely, but she was so joyful. Grace dressed Mom physically, but in addition, She dressed Mom with a wonderful countenance. And it's not an easy task since my mom generally sleeps late. Best regards, Diana. You can have this kind of transformation in downtown Ridgewood. You can make it possible for seniors to stay in Ridgewood when they need assistance, rather than having to move away. You can make it possible for Ridgewood residents to visit their parents in downtown Ridgewood, rather than having to go outside to other communities where their parents are staying. Today, we seek your encouragement to apply for a formal application to you for an assisted living development in downtown Ridgewood. In this regard, I'd like to hand out some material to you, and I'd like to go through that.
And again, this is just, I thought the concept was new, and I thought it was worth the council hearing this generally, but also particularly because Mr. Cook was looking at village property, I guess is the most recent. We have subsequently had another assisted living company contact us, and so it's a piece of the housing mix that we don't have right now, and I think it's worth exploring and just having this conversation. So anyway, back to you.
The top page of the material that was given to you was distributed earlier, but I'd like to point out just a few things of the benefits of assisted living downtown for you. Care for seniors, as I've mentioned, bringing families downtown, which will create additional retail activity, increase in tax revenues that I estimate will be somewhere in the range of $300,000 a year, where the property today, as a village property, is not generating any taxes, no school children, and our proposal to build a public parking garage, which will cost us about $4.5 million. The next sheet is the current site at Franklin and Walnut that shows you the layout. And then the next one is our proposed site plan. At the corner on the street level would be retail, about 3,000 square feet of retail. Then the site plan maintains the current easements across the property to the private property that's in the interior that services the retail surrounding. At the same point, there's an entrance to the assisted living and parking elevators. And the parking garage would be 180 spaces to increase the parking available in downtown. And if we could lease the strip that's just beyond our property, it's a 15-foot strip, a long 15-foot strip. If we could lease that from the current owner, we could increase the parking to 200, which would make the building much more efficient for parking. And in return for building a $4.5 million garage, or whatever it takes to do that, for the 180 to 200 parking spaces, and for turning the property, which is now does not generate taxes, to an increase of $300,000 a year, we would propose to lease the property for $1 a year. Then the next two sheets are the two levels of parking above grade, and then that's followed by 3 floors of assisted living. Then finally, in your illustration is a cross-section that shows you how the uses are distributed within the building. In addition to that, I've left a packet which tells more about us as the Kensington, and also has photographs of our development in White Plains, New York, and then the proposed building that we will be doing in Montclair, New Jersey, with a construction start in the first part of next year. In conclusion, I would say you have the possibility of ending the isolation of seniors who need assistance and bringing that kind of transformation we've talked about in downtown Ridgewood.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Cook. Thank you for this comprehensive packet and information. Again, I think the idea of assisted living in Ridgewood would be wonderful. Additional parking would be wonderful too, but we appreciate your presentation. Let me just open it up to council if they have questions or comments.
Thank you. If I ask you, you are planning 180 total spaces, and I'm not clear. It looks as if there are 88 units? 88 residential
units,
units, 82 units, okay.
88 units, yes.
88 units, I'm sorry.
Assisted living.
So if you have 88 units, how much of the 180 parking spaces do you think would be dedicated to those 88 units?
The national standard for parking for assisted living is 1/2 space per unit. Our residents don't drive. So it would be 44 spaces, and those don't need to be dedicated. They would be a part of the public parking.
So the parking, as you contemplated, would be 180 spaces available all the time to the public, and there'd be no preference, no dedication, no
No, we believe
preferred
that
use by your tenants.
We believe that the parking garage would be more efficient if there was not dedication. There's more diversity, and more people would be able to use it than if you segregate the parking garage.
And the last question for me, and do you contemplate operating both the residential component and the garage?
I think that's something of discussion that we do with the village. One possibility would be that we would lease back the garage and you would operate it. You're set up to operate it, and frankly, you have the right to tow somebody. We would be reluctant to tow somebody who might say, I'll never put my mother in that home. You towed my garage, my car.
And you cover all the project costs? You cover all the project costs except land acquisition. We lease the land to you for $1.
And then we might lease you back the garage to operate.
Thank you, sir.
Just one specific question from me, and then we'll pass it on. On the parking, 180 spots, we lose some because it's built on the current parking area. Do you know what the net gain is for us? Do you know how many spaces you would take up to build a garage?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Where you have the garage situated, we have parking meters now. So we would lose those parking meters. I'm just wondering, so how many would we lose? Have you factored that in? And how much, what would be the net gain?
Currently, there are 80, at least I've counted, 86 parking spaces on the lot.
So this would be then a net gain of about 100. Is that correct?
We take 86, yes, about 100.
Oh, great.
And hopefully we could build more than 180 parking spaces.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. So I just have a bunch of general questions for you. Thank you for giving us this, because the initial information was a little, it's always better to have the pictures. Do you have an elevation for us? Is this the only elevation that you have for what it would look like in the street?
I do not have an elevation, but if there's an interest on the part of the village to proceed to talk about this, we would be glad to do those elevations.
Okay. So I guess one quick question is, how did you pick this site, or why did you pick this site in Ridgewood?
Yes. We were very interested in Ridgewood, We have targeted communities in New Jersey and New York. So first of all, it was Ridgewood, and then we want to be where we can be seen. 40% of our leads for people who eventually move in come from drive-by. We want to be visible. We want to be downtown in the center of the action rather than isolated out in a pasture. Okay?
Okay. And then your population. So, we all know assisted living. We all, have family members who are in assisted living throughout the country. You made a statement that none of your residents are going to drive.
Yes.
I disagree with that statement. Why would you say that none of your residents are going to be drivers?
Well, I spent 12 years with Sunrise. We have developed 163 homes.
Okay.
And, there might be one or two exceptions out of those 163 homes.
So
Our
are they going to
seniors
be
don't drive.
ambulatory then, or are they, because when I think of assisted living, I think of seniors who downsize but still have, a carefree lifestyle that they can drive to where they want to go, and then they come back to their assisted living unit, and so.
In the industry, we call that independent living.
Okay.
Those are individuals who still are active in terms of driving and still going out, taking their car out to visit their grandchildren. We call that independent living. Our residents are individuals who need assistance every day on one or two daily activities, like getting up, bathing, and so forth.
So this facility would be limited to only those type residents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, again, to the population, would they only be Ridgewood residents
No.
No, okay.
Obviously, it's a distinct advantage to Ridgewood residents because of the location. And so we would see a very high percentage. On the other hand, there would be Ridgewood residents who have parents who might live in California. Let's say you're concerned about your mother. She's living alone. She's way out in California. You worry about her every night. The best thing that can happen for you is to have her move close to you so you can see her. And that would be an advantage to Ridgewood residents as well.
So then, for these residents who are assisted living, is there anything in your plan that would account for the people that come to visit them? So if you have 88 units, we're going to assume that 88 people, at least 88
Right.
cars would come to visit those residents.
The parking ratio has been determined nationally, and our parking studies, and we'd be glad to share those with you, can count what was actually used for assisted living.
Okay. And then, is this a private facility, or would you also,
It's totally
would
private.
Section 8 be eligible for your facility?
Oh, it is private. We are a private company, private enterprise, and all of our residents are private with the exception of 10%. And the 10% is required by the state of New Jersey as Medicaid.
Okay. And how did you arrive at the $300,000 in tax payment back to the village? Is that valuing the improved site?
Our experience in Montclair.
Your experience in Montclair, okay.
Mhm.
And is it a similar facility to Montclair? The
Yes.
parking garage?
It's 88 units. There, we didn't have the requirement of replacing the parking.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have. Thanks. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Is your assisted living complex in Montclair, does that have retail space in the basement of it too, on the foot?
Yes, it does. It has 2,000 square feet of retail.
And you said it's slated to go up, or it hasn't been built yet?
We have all of our approvals, with the exception of building permit. Our construction drawings are 85% complete, and we're hoping to start construction in the first part of next year.
In the center of town also?
It is. It is. It's right across the street from Starbucks, half a block from the best restaurants in town.
Congratulations, that's great. I would be thrilled if this worked out, but of course it's a complicated, long process. But of course I work with seniors in town, and if there are going to be changes to, if there are going to be new residential housing in town, I would love it to address the shortage in housing for seniors. And I hope that we do end up with some assisted living and also some independent living arrangements for seniors. So I look forward to this discussion.
Thank you.
The parking situation, you have to account for staff too, I guess, right?
Yes, that's included in the national statistics and the parking studies.
Because the parking is something that obviously is very high on the list for everyone in this town.
Yes.
It's been a problem for a long time. Thank you.
Great. Well, I don't have any other questions. I don't know if you have any other thoughts, but what we can do is get back to you, and after we sort of digest a lot of this information.
Look forward to talking to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Take care. All right. Our next presentation is going to be the newly reformed Ridgewood Arts Council. We have Tony Damiano, reconstituted Ridgewood Arts Council. Tony Damiano, who we all know is the owner of Mango Jam, the head of the Ridgewood Guild, about 1,000 other things. He's taken on this job. And actually, let me have the deputy mayor. You want to give some background on this?
Thank you. There had been a lot of talk during our campaign, and no doubt before then, from people who spoke to us about reigniting, relaunching the Ridgewood Arts Council. And after the election, the mayor and I invited people to attend a meeting in this room. We were delighted at the turnout. I don't remember the number, Tony, but it was a lot of people who showed up. And the array of talent within the world of the arts, performing arts, there were theater producers and actors and painters and sculptors and the like, gathered and displayed a lot of enthusiasm for the concept. Tony, however, was the most enthusiastic. He stepped forward and said he would take charge. He said he needed some time to get the organization in place, and he took the time, but he did very well in getting the organization in place. And they had their first event last week. And Tony, I guess over to you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank council for having me here tonight. I haven't actually spoken in 7 years. It was a great honor to be approached to resurrect something that shouldn't have been disbanded in the first place. So yes, as Deputy Mayor has stated, and Mayor, I thank him for giving me the opportunity. And they both said, we're going to get a couple people together. Could you talk a little bit? Well, little did I know we were at SRO here back in November. And heard a lot of people talk and what had been happening in town, etc. And there is just such a wealth of talent in town. Fine artists, dancers, musicians. What town can boast that they have their own symphony? And yet we don't have a place to umbrella all of this talent. And the Arts Council did disband. So I set out to put a group together, and based on our success of the Ridgewood Guild, we actually scrutinized the individuals who we brought into the board. And I had not spoken about the Ridgewood Guild to this day to council, and we're going in our 4th year, and I just wanted to thank our village manager and council for being very supportive of the Ridgewood Guild. We seem to be making a lot of headway, and we are in our 4th year. We're approaching 200 members, and as you all know, residents can join the Guild as well as businesses. We've made great improvements in town. The Arts Council started in November with the organizational meeting, and I did sort of put it on the back burner because, hey, I have to pay the bills at my home, and I have a job. So I continued it in January. And the first person that I thought as approaching to be VP is Dottie Pizzuto, who is here tonight, because she is in the entertainment field, and she is just a wealth of knowledge about Ridgewood and everything talent related. So Dottie, I brought in as VP, and we began the interview process. Not everyone could be here tonight, but I do want to announce who has joined the council. We have Greg Farrell as treasurer. Greg is better known as the president of the Orpheus Club. secretary is Kathy Zreich, who actually, her husband David Zreich is on the Guild board and was very much a forerunner in starting the Junior Guild to create drug and alcohol-free programs for the students in town. So Kathy has stepped forward and has agreed to be secretary. We have Christina Deutsch as our art curator, Tom Wells, our attorney, Elliot Bloom, better known as the owner of Red Mango, the other mango in town. We brought in Elliot because he was very integral in getting the Irvine, California Cultural Center off the ground, so he's a wealth of knowledge as far as procuring a cultural center. We have Lisa Williamson, who is our graphic designer and designed the logo for the New Arts Council, Margie Downs and Bill Carbone, who's here tonight, who are actually ex-RAC members, board members. So our council is together. We started the Arts Council in March by the series of meetings and tossing around different ideas on what to do, what our first event will be, et cetera, et cetera. We are going to be classified as a 501c3. Tom Wells is working on that process as we speak, actually. And it is a long-term process. It's not something that happens overnight, but that is our goal, to be a 501c3. And the reason is that we can apply for grants, et cetera, to help build the council. The ultimate goal of the council is to create a cultural center in town, to umbrella all the many aspects of the arts. Like I mentioned before, you know, what other town has a symphony in town, and yet they have to play in a house of worship? And we have one of our middle schools, and they have a terrific auditorium, but the acoustics aren't great. So none of the many aspects of arts have a central home location. So that would be the ultimate goal. We know it is a huge undertaking, but, you know, hey, what's a little challenge? So we set off creating our first event, and it was called Pop-Up Gallery, and it was conducted over a 2-day period just last week on Friday and Saturday. And we found a suitable location. The Abbott family donated the space at 31 North Broad Street. And our curator and our committee brought in artists. We had watercolorists, oil paintings. We had 2 sculptors, a woman who designed dolls, another woman designed handbags. And it was a 2-day event open to the public. We had a private party on Friday evening. 130 invitations were sent out, and over 100 people attended. So the response was just tremendous, and we were so grateful and thrilled. We had a lot of people donate to the Arts Council. Barbara Kiernan and Tom Wells donated the wine, King Supermarket, the ice and water, Dottie and myself supplies, etc., to get this off the ground because, you know, everything has a price tag. The event cost us about $1,200. And we are, of course, in a deficit right now because we didn't sell nearly as much artwork as we would have liked to, but that really wasn't the goal. The goal was to get it on the map. We actually did sell 3 pieces of artwork and did collect some donations at the event. But again, it was a kickoff to the Arts Council. We are planning 2 to 3 events of the same nature a year, and the second pop-up gallery will probably coincide with our jazz festival that is going to happen in September. The second program that we're doing is the pop-up galleries that will pop up throughout town in the vacant storefronts. We are sort of working out the kinks with that now. We have to apply for insurances per location, etc., get the landlords aboard, and certainly get the volunteers to execute it. Right now we do have 2 locations in town showing artwork. So it's going to be sort of a surprise thing. You'll just notice artwork happening in vacant storefronts, and what better way to fill those spaces until they are rented. The other idea we're coming up with is probably a poetry reading called Poetry Jam, and we will be talking about that at our next meeting, which is June 13th, which will combine both the RAC board and the Ridgewood Guild boards, sort of a meet and greet, and to see how we could integrate some of the events that we do at the Guild with the Arts Council, Jazz Feast being one. The one concern about the event was like I said, over 100 people attended, and the biggest concern, I hate to say, was parking. People were frustrated that on a Friday night in Ridgewood, couldn't find parking, 20 to 25 minutes. This is such an important topic of conversation. I can't stress it enough. As a business owner, as a former store designer and visual merchandise director, I have opened stores throughout the country, probably in 38 states. The first two things that we looked at in a town were, number one, the parking, number two, the tenant mix, and if the tenant mix was off balance, we knew there was something wrong with the town, and we passed on it. Right now, our tenant mix is very off balance, and it has been for about 7 or 8 years. There are many factors why this is off balance, but one of the main reasons is parking. People stay away from Ridgewood because of the parking situation and the lack of it. Secondly, it's the meters, and we're all past the 50-cent increase. And actually, when that was raised, I did a little homework and called about 5 towns comparable to Ridgewood. Well, lo and behold, they had been at 50 cents an hour a year or two before we raised our pricing. Upper Montclair is actually at 75 cents an hour. So that's no shock. The problem, I believe, with the meters is this, and I have to say this, I don't believe we should take away the meters, because what would happen is the commuters and employees would flood the streets. And we have enough problems right now with employees on the streets. The problem is someone comes into town, they cannot get anything done in a 2-hour period. I strongly urge the village to take a look at the time frame and increase the hourly rate to 3 hours. Someone comes into town, they want to get their hair done, have lunch, shop, and what could you get done in 2 hours? It's a nightmare. I was ticketed just recently because my concentration was planting the tree wells for the Ridgewood Guild. Our art curator was ticketed, and it's not that you don't want to pay the 50 cents, it's just that you're so preoccupied. She was preoccupied setting up the gallery, and she was ticketed. So, of course, the Ridgewood Guild will pick up that summons. Lastly, I want to say we need to be a more customer-friendly town. An incident happened a couple weeks ago, and Mayor's probably tired of me talking about this, but one of our new business owners was ticketed for having a sandwich board on the sidewalk. Now, this may be an ordinance in town, but it's an ordinance that has never been acted upon. And for a new business to be ticketed like that, when I can tell you there are at least 2 or 3 businesses out there that have sandwich boards on their sidewalk day in and day out, it's a real shame, and it turns people off. So I think we need to communicate to the business owners if ordinances are going to be put in place. We can certainly get a message out to our guild members. And the standards do need to be picked up in town. If that's the ruling, then let it be. But give someone a warning first before you ticket them. We have to be more customer friendly. So I really advocate that because we want to grow this town. The businesses are so struggling once again. And even though on the outside we look terrific and there are many less vacancies as there were 2 and 3 years ago, I hear this time and time again. And I'm hearing it from the new businesses in town who you may think are doing well, but we disappoint them every day because we're not a customer-friendly village. So, I urge you all to just take a hard look at that. Again, we are getting the Arts Council up and running. We welcome any donations or volunteers that will help us get the programs in order. And it is very exciting, and I'm very thrilled to be a part of it. So thank you all very much.
Great. Well, thank you, Tony. Aside from advocating for 75 cents an hour for meters, I think I agreed with everything you said. Parking, just to touch on that quickly, you're absolutely right. And I think the 3-hour parking idea is definitely worth exploring and something probably the council should discuss for the points you raised. But if I could step back a second, the Ridgewood Guild, just first of all, thank you to you and the Guild for all you've done for the last few years. I don't know, a lot of people don't realize when they see the performers out on the street on a weekend night or the Winter Fest or the films in the park, that's the Guild. And you guys have done a lot to add to the vibrancy of the downtown, and I want to thank you for that. Ridgewood Arts Council, I'm so excited about that. I'm not like a real arts guy, but as you know, but I think it's great. And this started, as Tony said, and as Deputy Mayor said, from this idea, this vision, if you will, that what's missing in the downtown is a performing arts center, a culture center. I mean, we have so much talent in this town, and there's such a hunger for talent. Performers, actors, singers, musicians, you name it. When we had our meeting here in November, about 50 people showed up, if not more. I mean, we had the New Players Board, we had Art of Motion, we had folks from the Parlance concerts. We had, I mean, just a cross-section of the arts community, if you will, in Ridgewood, hungry for this. And I think, you know, I applaud you for your efforts. I know it is a very ambitious undertaking. You know, you've got my full support. I know you've got Albert's full support. It's great, and we're really excited about it. So, I don't know if anyone else has any questions or comments.
No, I'll just comment. I don't know how you have the time in the day to do one more thing, because I know that you bless this village with your volunteerism, and I really thank you for that.
You're quite welcome.
And, you know, from somebody who can only draw stick figures, my mother-in-law was a gifted artist. She did every type of art there was, and, you know, my children hopefully are going to follow in her footsteps as opposed to mine, but I think this is something that's wonderful for the village.
Well, when Paul approached me, I don't think he knew that I had a BA in art, a BA in English, and a minor in theater, so my heart is in the right place. That said, I know I'm not on payroll, but you have to understand, every time I step away from my store, I have to pay an employee to be there. So it is costing me a little bit. But that said, that's perfectly fine. It's all for the good of Ridgewood. Getting back to the cultural center, again, if we were to you know, acquire space, et cetera, build a center, it has to go hand in hand with a parking garage, because the center we will build will hold 400 to 500. That would be the capacity. And if we can't have a little soiree in town for 100 people, how could we accommodate 400 or 500? So it's just food for thought. And I have actively been searching. I actually looked at 7 different locations, as you know, and it's not going to happen overnight, but we'll keep the wheel spinning.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. All right, Ken.
Mayor.
What would you like to do?
Mayor and Council, if we could start with the issues where staff are involved, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
Which happens to be the first one, 7A1. Our village engineer is here, Chris Rudishauser. He has been working diligently since Hurricane Sandy to not only help us to orchestrate the repairs needed to the cleanup of the debris and the trees, but to also get the paperwork in line so that we can get full reimbursements from FEMA. And he has a recommendation to us in terms of canceling one expenditure that you've already approved and transferring that over to cover other expenses that were necessary during the cleanup. So, Chris, if I've stepped on your presentation, just add to it as needed.
No, you didn't, Ken. Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you is a modification of some of the resolutions that were initially presented to the Council immediately after Hurricane Sandy. Those initial resolutions were just that, the initial ones. Now that we've done our cleanup in the village, the stump removal, the stalk removal, we've gotten the bills from our vendors and we have to pay them. What we have found is that one vendor that we had selected, Environmental Renewal Inc., ERI, we did not need their services because we found a less expensive way to deal with the vegetative waste that was created from the storm. We'd like to close that resolution that we never charge anything against, transfer it to DTS, Downs Tree Service, that we use as our primary vendor for our cleanup efforts. We also are requesting an additional $6,455 above what we had originally requested to pay the last of the outstanding invoices. We anticipate that money will be reimbursed by FEMA. What you have before you will also be submitted to FEMA to close out our debris management. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any from the council.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Is the additional $6,000, you did say 6, right? Is that also reimbursable?
Yes, everything is going to be submitted for reimbursement. We hope to get at least 75% from FEMA. FEMA has been kind of slow in their reimbursements to the municipalities. However, we've recently been in contact with a representative from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, and they are acting as an advocate for the municipalities interacting with FEMA. So we hope that'll help us get some of the money flow back to the village, because I know it's been a critical item in our municipal budget.
Thank you. Any questions, comments?
Good. Chris, if you'd stay right there. Council, if you could go to 7A8. 7A8, this is the change order number 1, Chris, for the roof replacement. Any comments on that?
What we have what I'm presenting to the council is a request for a change order to address some of the roofs on the structures for the water department. We worked with the water department to identify locations. They also need roof work. They had previously budgeted capital funds for this. We have a contractor that is doing the roof at the house on the Habernickel property, number 1057. They're doing the roof down at the Signal Building, and they've also done the roof at the Parks Garage. Contractor has been very diligent. They've been doing good work. Their prices are very, very reasonable, and we asked them if they'd be interested in doing additional roofs for the village. They indicated they would be. That is the genesis of the change order presented to you folks.
Any questions, comments? Okay, thanks.
Good. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And then, Mayor, that brings us to 7B2, which is the 2012 telecommunication services.
On this subject, is there a particular way you want to approach this? Did you have something in mind? Do you want to talk about going forward? What we've done since the May 22nd meeting? Maybe that's a good place to start.
Okay, sure, I will. As everyone will remember, at the last meeting, Nextel Communications services to the village was withdrawn, and the village was faced with what the next step would be. So Dylan Hansen, our networking administrator, and myself, we met immediately, and we have two concepts here. The first is a short term. Obviously, if the phones were to go out tomorrow, we need to make sure we have the services to meet those needs. So Dylan made the contact to local contractors, and he feels comfortable. He has a list of phone companies that if one doesn't respond to what his needs are, he'll have a number 2, a number 3, a number 4, and as necessary, when we get him up here, you can ask him any questions on those. More importantly, going forward, our network engineer, administrator, and the village engineer meant to pull together a bid specifications that would meet the needs of the village for any telecommunications telephone systems to service the current Toshiba systems that we have. And they were extremely timely and put together a very detailed bid package that actually has been publicized now and is out there with a due date of June 19th. June 19th. So on June 19th, hopefully we'll have several competitive bids to go forth from there. That'll meet our long-term needs, and then we feel comfortable with, barring any major breakdown, that we're okay short-term. We did take another look at the financial packaging of how the 17.5 being exceeded with the $24,000 resolution. That obviously flagged in our finance processing a red flag, so that's why we had the resolution of the council. Our auditor had recommended to us, and our CFO had brought into practice, the use of commodity flagging as opposed to vendor flagging. And normally I would say there would never be an issue, but obviously we've all experienced an issue. So now we're redundant. We now have a $17,500 commodity flag and a $17,500 vendor flag. So hopefully that will never be a situation that comes forth in the future where we get in that no man's land of the $8,047. So I think that beats the basic issues that we jumped on right after the meeting.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? I know the fire chief was asked to be here. I don't know if anybody had any particular.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions for the fire chief.
Chief, if you could come back up, please. Welcome back. Fern?
Sure, thanks. I wish you were here at the last meeting because I think things got a little out of hand and people were asking questions that perhaps couldn't be answered. So I guess for my own benefit, I'm not versed in phones or how you order them, so I guess maybe for my own benefit, if you could tell me what phones, because people were asking me questions as to how is the system set up at the firehouse, why did you need to order phones, are we safe? There were lots of questions going around, and I figured the best person to answer that for me and for the village would be the fire chief.
Yeah, right now we're 100% safe. We have a full phone system. But what happened at the time was the whole phone system went down. So we didn't have any phone in the whole fire department. Okay. And we contacted anybody trying to fix it, they couldn't fix it. So we contacted Tom, and he came and put a temporary phone system in. And then from that point, he worked with Dylan, the IT director, and set up a phone system for us.
Okay, so when you guys, and again, when the phone system goes down, what does that mean?
That means, well, nobody can call if they have an emergency. Fire prevention had no communications at all, so nobody could call and make appointments or set up inspections. Okay. So it was something that we need. Obviously we can't run without phone systems, so it was something we needed right away.
And you said that you would call other you had called other vendors, and Tom was the last resort, or what was that?
Yeah, we called other vendors. We called Tom to see if he knew of anybody that could fix the system. We found somebody from 10 years ago through an email that he happened to put on his invoice, and he said that he recommended 10 years ago that we replace the system, and that he was retired, and he didn't know anybody that would fix it. So, yeah, we tried calling everybody we could, but...
Okay. I understand you guys had a meeting last week. Did you guys discuss at that meeting anything about redoing the whole phone system, or are we going to continue with the phone system we had, or?
I think that's Dylan's thing as far as why we got this phone system, why we have Toshiba. I have no.
Okay.
That's nothing I know about.
Thanks. That's all I have.
Hey, Chief, just a few questions. So this was last May, right? Because it was an issue about what the timing was, in May or August. The phones went down in May of 2012?
Yeah, they went down in May. Dylan fixed a couple of the phones. They lasted for a couple weeks, and then it went completely down. And that was right at the end of May.
And the phones you had, were they Toshiba phones? Were you on a Toshiba?
No.
So the Toshiba phones you have now are the first time you've had Toshiba in the fire department?
Right. Yeah, we got the same phones as Village Hall, as every other department now. So we're compatible with it.
And when there's a 911 call, so someone calls 911, do they call you on the phones, or do they call you through your radios?
They call the central 911 goes to central dispatch.
Right.
But there are people that do call us directly, because the old, they used to call on the old phone number, which comes right to us before 911.
But most of your calls come through 911?
I'd say 95%.
Come through, and they come through your radio, right? They don't come through the
the phone system, right?
Right. Yep. So in terms of, because we're trying to understand sort of what the emergency was. The emergency wasn't in August. It was, if anything, it was in May. And in terms of emergency, 95% of your calls don't rely on the phones anyway. They come because it comes through 911.
Right. Yeah. The other big part of it was fire prevention. There was no way for anybody to get permits or get scheduled times, or for them to even make phone calls. Yeah. So we needed them to be set up right away.
Any questions, comments?
Well, I guess I just am curious why, if you say a couple of the phones went down, but then Dylan fixed it, but then they all crashed. So are these hardwired desktop phones? Are they all connected to each other?
Yeah, they're all, there's the
so
main
is the server crashed?
Yeah, the main phone, the server is up in the upstairs, and then they're all connected to the server. So the server is what crashed. And Dylan was able to get one handset to work, and that lasted about 2 weeks, and then that one crashed.
So did you guys all know that it was an $8,000 repair job for the phones in Village Hall in May? And then in June, you asked for a $24,000 resolution for capital improvements. And so there were two separate items being billed, but just no one ever mentioned to us the $8,000 repair job in May?
Well, no, they went down in May. Tom was nice enough to put temporary phones in at the end of May, I think, or beginning of April. And then it took April, May, June, July. It took like 2 or 3 months for us to get a system together. And then I think the resolution was put in sometime in August when we finally came up with a price. So I don't know when the $24,000 was put in, but that's when the...
I'm sorry?
I don't know when the other resolution was put in. I just know when the fire department's resolution was finally finalized, was sometime in August.
No. My other questions for Dylan, really.
Yeah, I think Dylan could answer better as far as
All
that.
right, thanks, Chief. Dylan, can you come on? Good evening.
Good evening. Dylan Hanson.
My question is about the bidding process, and it's nothing about my colleague and my fellow seatmate, who I've always gotten along with very well, until now, but we have. I'm asking, besides the ethical question of the arm's length and all that, it's about the bidding process and whether or not, how often do we go out to bid? Since we have a relationship with Extel, have we ever been able to verify that it is the most competitive price? Or is it just that we get to the point where we think it is, but we don't know it is?
Well, because they were on state contract and they were the original installers of the phone system, they knew the best layout for the phone system. So to me, it was feasible to stay with them. So I didn't bid it out. I asked for an extension on what we could spend with them for the upgrades for that year.
Because my understanding is that the state contract price is often and usually the best price, but not always the best price.
Well, when I got the proposals for the system upgrades, I did go online and compare the prices, and I found the prices to be very comparable at that time to what was being offered by other companies.
That's what I was saying. So with every other vendor that we do business with, we're very careful to make sure that we don't just say we're very comfortable with this vendor. We've been using him for years. We think because of convenience and comfort with repetition, we're going to stay with this vendor. We're careful to make sure that we always have 2 or 3 bidders and we bid out the project. So this shouldn't have been any different because it's a competitive world, and after 5 years, or I don't know how often you would take, these new jobs out to bid. Say when we're going to look through all these vouchers, when new big projects would come up, would they go out to bid, or would you just say, we've always used Tom, we should stay with Tom because it's convenient and it's always been the best, so it will probably be the best going forward?
Well, this is the first time we did an upgrade of this magnitude to the system. So before then, we were always under the threshold, and it was just for basic emergency repairs. We never had
big projects.
Big project such as that since I've been here.
Yes. Dylan, for the record, I want to ask you a couple of questions. I'd like you to answer them as honestly as you can. When you first approached me back in, and again, I'm not sure of the time frame, when you talked about moving to LightPath, away from Verizon to save money for the village, and you needed to do some upgrades in this building here, as well as do some work for the water department, what did I tell you?
You didn't really want to do it.
Correct. And did you go out and get other bids from other vendors for the work that they thought you needed to have done in Village Hall?
Yes.
And did you ask me to come and look at those proposals to see if they were accurate for what you really needed? And did I tell you that, and I don't remember what the number was, $60,000 or something crazy like that, did I tell you that what was being proposed to you wasn't necessary and you didn't need all of that equipment because it was already inherent within the system and you didn't need to do that?
Yes, you told me the equipment they were offering was beyond what the system needed at that time.
And then what did you ask me to do at that point?
I asked you if it would be okay to use you.
Right. And then hindsight is always 20/20. I went to we had a discussion, I'm not sure if we had it directly, the three of us with the village attorney, and he did some research in terms of whether or not it was allowed under state law and ethics law and so forth, and he rendered an opinion both to you and to me that was brought to the council in the public forum to vote on, correct?
Correct.
And do you agree that the initial $24,000 proposal, and there's been some discrepancies in terms of, was for the upgrade of the processes at Village Hall, the Water Department ACD, and the PRI cards to accommodate LightPath when you get them into the building?
Yes.
And that subsequent to that, and I think the chief reminded me that, and it's important to tell everybody too, that the phone system in the fire department was 35 years old?
Yeah, Nortel Networks.
At least. And Nortel Networks is a Chapter 11, they're no longer in business selling that equipment. And you can't even get parts for it, it's a 35-year-old system. And I think it's important to understand that, in fact, when the system, you got the system back up again, and I think, based upon the timing, it was May to end of May, and then it went down, and at some time come June, or the beginning of June or the end of May, I was called, I'm not sure if you called me or the chief called me, and they were completely out of service. So I took a system, used system, and half a dozen phones or whatever, sent my technician over there at no charge to the village. Didn't charge the village for any of that work, either for the labor or the equipment. And then the purchase order process, which I had nothing to do, took a period of 6 weeks or something like that. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes.
And then sometime in August, I think it was the third week in August, it was issued a purchase order for the fire department. We commenced and did that work and took back the loaner equipment, put a new system in there, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate it.
Don, could I ask you a question? As I understand it, we are almost now entirely on Toshiba phones?
For the most part, yes.
I'm sorry, what?
For the most part, yes.
Okay, so over time, we've been weaned off the other system, and I understand Nortel, this went bankrupt, so we are very sort of Toshiba rich in our telecommunications. Do we have a relationship with another repair facility, another service provider for Toshiba phones other than Xtel?
That's what we're hoping to do.
No, but do we now?
No, there are some vendors around in case of emergency that we can contact, but we have no control of what will charge us at that time.
I noticed there are a lot of them around. Now, again, maybe fair comment that some are good and some are bad. There's some Paramus and Hackensack, and it's not like there's only, as I suggested last meeting, we're in the Northeast United States, and if it isn't here, then it doesn't exist. So there are a lot of these other service providers around. And apart from this, has nothing to do with Mr. Ritchie and his company, but lots of companies come and go, and that could happen for Xtel. You think it would be a good idea if these systems are so critical that they can go down in the middle of the night, that we have more than one service provider upon whom we would rely, who would recognize us as a good customer and answer the call?
Well, that's what we're hoping to accomplish with the bid, but
Now
when we award the bid, we're only going to get one vendor.
Well, under the state contract, there is only one vendor, but we don't have to go for that monopoly format. We as a village are free to bid. In fact, we might bid out and find that another service provider is not as good or better, not as expensive or less expensive, or not as expensive or more expensive. So we don't know unless we bid. I'm just suggesting that, and again, it's not a comment, I'm looking forward, not back. Going forward, these critical systems should not be dependent upon one service provider, be it a council member or not. I'd like to see us have somebody else who says, oh yeah, you're a good customer, I will come out at in the middle of the night, as using the example Mr. Ritchie suggested. I think it would be very good practice, since this thing is so critical, that if Mr. Ritchie should decide to get out of this business, or he goes on vacation or whatever, that we do have an alternative source, an alternative service provider.
Yeah, but from my understanding is if we award one bid, we only have one vendor. Can we bid out again for a second backup vendor?
I'm suggesting we can go the RFP route, right, for a service provider. at least as I understand the system. You don't have to go the RFP route if you use a state-certified vendor/service provider, but if you want to go to one of these other 10 local service providers, you go via the RFP route. Is that correct? I mean, maybe Ken would...
Well, let me jump in, and we may all be saying the same thing. This is a rather complex system that we have now, and everyone in the industry has their own opinions on what you need. And if we were to have a brand new system set up, installed, everything working perfectly, and Dylan was to bring someone in to evaluate, does the system need any improvements, I guarantee you there'd be $20,000 worth of improvements that vendor would say we need to have. So what we're hoping to do, and the way the bid specifications have been written, is to come up with a vendor that meets all of our response needs for the right price, that we can hopefully build a trust with very rapidly. If we can't build a trust with them very rapidly, then we will be going for a second vendor or a third vendor. But, and I think this is what I'm hearing, for us to say to these vendors, and Chris would know how this would even be written, we're going to pick two of you, and when my car breaks down, I might take the muffler repair to you, and I might take the transmission repair to you. I think with our system, we'd only be setting ourselves up for major problems. I'm not trying to stick words in Bill's mouth, but if we're not happy with one vendor, we may want to go to another vendor. But to say we're going to have two of them coming in at any one time, I think would get us into a problem.
I was thinking of a backup to Xtel, assuming Xtel would continue.
Well, short term,
service
we
us.
do have a list of 5, 6 that we will, we've been very lucky. We've had 2 weeks here of no problems. And when you see the list of charges over time, most of them are, minor things that just somebody comes out, replaces the part, no big deal. So hopefully we'll have those, if anything, the short list, if anything minor happens. And then going forward, we're going to be tough on whoever's awarded. That if we don't have that instant relationship, then we'll bid again until we get the right group. But we're probably saying the same thing. It's just
Yeah, I think so.
to have two at the same time might be difficult.
If we could just, Dylan, get clarification in response to a point that Gwen brought up. You said the reason this $24,000 resolution last year was unique is because oftentimes it's not as big, whatever the job is. And right before this meeting, or actually at this meeting, Ken gave us sort of this list of invoices going back to 2002, and it shows that about $170,000 was paid to Xtel. So not just 24, there's $170,000. That suggests a lot of work over the years. Do we have Toshiba phones purchased through Xtel in all Village buildings now?
The ones that have systems, yes. If they have a
like
main
Village Hall?
system. So, for example, water pollution only has 2 or 3 lines, so they only have a couple of phones. They don't have a phone system. Signal department, same deal. They only have a couple of lines coming in, so there's maybe 2 or 3 phones located in the facility. So they don't have an entire phone system to handle all their call deliveries.
How about Northwest Dispatch?
I don't handle Northwest, but from my understanding, they do have a Toshiba phone system.
So they have Toshiba phones. So all the phones in Village Hall, including police department, Toshiba?
Village Hall is entirely Toshiba.
And you said fleet, there's some. Library, there's some.
The library, again, I don't handle, but from my understanding, yes, they have a Toshiba system.
And all of that was purchased through Xtel over the years?
I'm not aware of who purchased over there. I don't do the purchasing for them.
Okay. And again, Ken was only able to go back 10 years, I guess, still looking for...
Well, and Mayor, I just was,
Sure.
it took some time to pull this together, so we really haven't analyzed it. But if I look back at 2009, for example, it looks like right at $1,000 in 1, 2, 3, 4 different times that we needed equipment replaced. In 2010, 5 times for $600 total. In 2011, looks like 1 time for $150, and then 2012 was the major breakdowns that we had. So going back, there were bigger figures, but just those recent year numbers were, we got a pretty stable system that seemed to work, except for when the minor glitches came up until the summer of 2012.
But the $170,000 is approximately what you've gotten so far in terms of the business through Xtel.
If we pulled, well, just through 2002, and I guess it looks like it goes back to late 2002.
Let me comment. Just for the record also, it's important to understand that I was on the council from 1998 to 2002, was not on the council from 2002 to 2010. Additionally, in that time period, and I don't remember the exact date, Village Hall finally moved back from the old McHughes building back into, and moved to that building and moved back into that building. So there's some substantial labor charges involved with moving 100, probably 100 plus phones. What have we got, about 100 in the building, close to it? Yeah, so you know, this isn't all just systems work. It's labor associated with moving back and forth between McHughes and the Village Hall, as well as incidental things that would come up, failures and so on and so forth. So I think it's important to state that for the record. So.
Any other questions, comments?
Maybe before we leave the topic, I have great respect for Mr. Rogers and really do, but I'm going to respectfully disagree with his interpretation of the exception. And well, all I'm suggesting is I would like to, and maybe Mr. Ritchie you got the opinion, and I'm not disputing that, but where it says, or other reward for his services except the salary or fees established by law, ordinance, resolution of the council, I do not believe that the word reward for his services means payments for products sold. And I understand we could respectfully disagree on that point, but I would like to see this provision clarified so that going forward, this council knows whether or not an exception is even permissible by section 3-531. Because I'm not clear. There is at best an ambiguity.
I wasn't thinking services, I was thinking fees.
Okay, but fees or services to me does not encompass payment for goods. But again, there's no point. We don't have to have that debate now. I think payments, for example, for telephone systems to me would not be fees, fees and salaries. So I think it has to be clarified lest somebody else trip up on the same exception. I don't think it's healthy if we go down this road again, or if some other council goes down this road again in 5 years. So,
Mr. Rogers, if I could, for the record, you did clarify with Department of Community Affairs and also the ethics laws in the state of New Jersey prior to a resolution from this council, of which Councilman Aronson voted in favor of that, and there was no conflict in any case with any law based upon what you were told in Trenton. Is that correct?
As far, yes. I did check with the Department of Community Affairs. I did read the local government ethics law. I rendered an opinion that I thought as long as you did not participate in that, you are not compromising, as the local government ethics law says, you are not compromising the proper discharge of your duties. I still think that was, for the $24,000 resolution, I still think that was the proper legal opinion.
I think it's also important, too, to put on the record that, there's a question about whether or not state contract is the best or not the best. The Village of Ridgewood buys things off state contract every meeting, just about, from everything from police cars to copy machines to whatever. The state does a very, very intensive process in their bidding to get the very, very best, and it's a highly, highly competitive process. I personally went back to look at the firehouse job in terms of what was charged to the village and based upon labor cost and material cost. And that job, that $8,000 job, netted my business a total profit of $600. So believe me, if I did this kind of work all the time, I'd be out of business. But it is a low margin contract that the state puts out. Those of us who have it are happy to have that business because you end up with some service work down the road. But clearly, the state puts together a very, very extensive bidding process that is highly, highly competitive. And that's why this council and other councils routinely go to state contracts for police cars and computers. And I'm sure we probably even bought these iPads off state contract. And I see that for the next coming meeting, we have a couple of purchases from Dell Corporation off a state contract, which has obviously been, you can't do better than those prices based on that state contract. Okay, thanks so much.
Hey, Matt, just a question. So you rendered an opinion on the $24,000 resolution last year after contacting DCA, looking at the local ethics law, what have you. Did you ever render an opinion on the other $150,000 of business?
I mean, no, I didn't.
I mean, like not even a piece of it or any
No,
time over the year? No.
The only, again, the issue from my legal opinion had to do with the resolution and the request that Tom had made as to whether or not it would be okay for him to go ahead with that contract, which was for $24,000.
So prior to that?
Prior to that, I wasn't involved in any aspect.
I'm not sure why he would have rendered an opinion between 2002 and 2010 because I wasn't on the council.
Nor was I the village attorney.
No.
The reason I ask is because according to village code, it's position of, elected or appointed, and it's on the planning board, and I thought it was important to clarify that Matt only rendered opinion on it. Only rendered an opinion on 24,000. Folks. So, any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have something to say. Just for the record, if state contract prices from vendors render which vendor we use irrelevant, then why did we bring Goosetown in to interview them as to why we're still using them and why we haven't switched to a different vendor? Remember with the digital and the analog radios? I mean, and we really did make Goosetown drive all the way here from I don't know where, and we all sat down as a council together in the caucus room to discuss why are we still using Goosetown. And at the end of the discussion, Mr. Loving said, I'm sorry, I understand. This obviously is a state contract price, and we might as well use this vendor or the other vendor. It's all the same. Thank you very much for having this meeting. But it begged the question at the time, why are we using that vendor as opposed to another vendor? Why aren't we going out to bid? I think at that time it was a relevant question. And now, look, this is just an arm's length, healthy, good government, good ethics decision. If it saves us, if it costs us, and we'll find, Dylan, do you know what the new bids have come in at? How much more it's going to cost us?
Nothing's come in yet.
Yeah. But I thought I heard some speculation that it could be $2,000, $4,000, $5,000 more, maybe. And it could be the same price. It could be less. Bidding out is a good idea, and state contract prices aren't always the best price. And at the end of the day, I think this really is good government, despite what Ann said. This is bad government. I don't think this is a personal attack on my colleague. It is simply a question of good government and an arm's length distance between somebody who has influence in their position on government, whether they're on the council or they're on the planning board. That's why we sign the financial disclosure statement. That's why we go through the trouble, which I just did a week ago, of listing every single business I'm involved in, every single asset I hold in the village. Because if I vote on something that has to do with the street I live on or something else that affects my bottom line, I might be persuaded it might influence my vote. I think it's a good thing for Tom to not just recuse himself from one vote, but not to conduct business with the Village of Ridgewood. And I think most people know that, and I don't think this is an attack on Tom. I think this is looking forward, and this is good government. And I really don't appreciate the snickers, and I don't appreciate the glares and the looks. We as public officials have a very, very difficult job. You think I like sitting up here and being ridiculed or pilloried for doing my job? I find this to be just as difficult, and I've been in Tom's seat. I think, no, I have. I think that maybe I didn't put myself in a position where I conducted business in the village that I'm an elected official for, but it was when everybody accused us of holding secret meetings with developers or secret meetings with without alerting other council members and things like that. These were innocent mistakes. They didn't have to be leveled in public. The toothpaste was let out of the tube, and nobody really thought about how that felt. But look, it happens, and we move on. We're all trying to do our best, and I would appreciate if the lack of respect could be controlled on the other end of the bench. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I'll just make a comment. Councilman Houck mentioned Goosetown. Goosetown had presented to us, and the specific question was asked of him if he was going to be doing any work, and he said, and I think his words were, "I have no skin in the game. I won't be doing any work." He said that to us at that podium. And then when we got the information, his name was on it. Correct me, Dylan, if that was...
I'm not involved in our project.
Oh, that was Kevin. I'm sorry. That was Kevin.
Councilwoman, you're correct. We had, unfortunately, we have have a relationship with Goosetown. Fire department, central dispatch, police, all trusted their vendors and their respect for our system. So we had gone to them for consultant information, and that's when they made those statements. And so it's one of those things that as soon as the council made the decision, the next day I had each department saying, no, we got to stay with them. You should have been at the meeting and spoke up, because we were kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. But at the same time, they had said clearly to everyone they were not going to benefit from this. So we tripped over ourselves, and I guess we learned each step of the way. But it's slightly different than a state bid process.
All right, thank you, Dylan. Thanks, Ken. Next up.
Good. We can go back on the agenda then?
Yeah.
To 7A, and then we had to sneak it in, so it's 7A, 1A. This is a resolution to declare property surplus pickup truck with the Parks Department.
Questions or comments? All right.
And because of the time, if you need detail, I'll give you the detail, but these are all vehicles that are equipment it's dead, but we have backed up to know why it's dead. So 7A2 is resolution to declare surplus property, a 1997 backhoe, Parks Department.
Questions, comments? All right.
7A3, a 1999 Chevrolet pickup truck.
All right.
Number 7A4 is a resolution to purchase computer and server equipment from Dell Marketing. This is exceeds the $17,500. It's $43,700 of equipment.
All right.
Good?
Yep.
Next, item 5 is the same purchase of computer and networking equipment. This is from CDW Government Incorporated, total of $60,500. Both of these are from the 2012 capital, so it's various networking, computer system related items.
All right.
Item 6, unspecified services at Graydon Pool, and also number 7, another extraordinary unspecified services. Graydon Pool, we had emergency repair services to the electrical that was taken down by a truck that decided to turn around the parking lot. And water pollution control, we had a lift pump that went out, and we had to get emergency repairs on that.
Everything good at Graydon?
Not a single complaint from Graydon so far. We're 1 week into the process.
Right.
Good on both 6 and 7?
Are we gonna be paid back from that trucker's insurance?
Yeah. What we do is we file a claim with our own insurance company, and they then go against the other insurance company. So we will recover usually every single dime we put out, any police protection, any temporary services, we get it all back.
Okay, good. Thanks.
All right, we're up to 7B1. This is an annual activity where we approve the fireworks for July 4th or the backup day on July 5th.
Questions, comments? All right.
And B2, we've covered. B3 is, this is now on the website, and we're working on a way to promote it, but the OEM director, Jeremy Kleinman, has put this together, and I think you've all seen it. And we're looking at a way now to get more people to sign up for the emergency notification.
Great. Do you know what we're up to roughly, or?
Dylan's still here. We had gone through, he had gone through a process to take out duplications, and I don't want to say 2,500. Are we up that high? Do you know, Janet? The problem we had was some of us, probably like up here, we list a lot of different ways, so we couldn't just look at phone numbers. We had to kind of unduplicate it. So. Dylan, unduplicated people who have signed up for the emergency notification, what, you got an approximate number?
Around 2,700.
And it's growing at 200 as we speak, so it's 2,700. 7B4 was the offer from Fair Lawn for disabled individuals in Ridgewood to participate in their pool program. And I think that was back on here for additional discussion by the council.
Great.
Did you want to discuss it? Do you want it on for?
Oh, do anyone want to discuss that? We're not adopting anything, though. It was just their adoption of a resolution, right?
Right.
We have to do a resolution.
Just so everybody knows, they had a resolution that they adopted, but they also sent over what they called an interlocal services agreement for the village to sign.
Right.
And what I suggest, and anyway, I mean, it's certainly a great gesture of Fair Lawn to allow that to happen, to allow anybody wishing to use their pool for the purposes that they spoke of. But I don't know that it needs an interlocal agreement. There's issues in the agreement that pertain to liability. And basically, you know, if they're willing to accept them, then anybody from the village of Ridgewood, I think it's up to us to go out and announce it, make sure it's noticed. But it really isn't an interlocal agreement because it's done on an individual basis with anybody who goes over there, really not us. So we're not sending anybody there. They're allowing anybody from this town with disabilities that want to use their pool to go over and use it. And they pay the fee, we don't pay the fee.
Right.
So
could you explore that? Because if we don't need to do this, it'd be
if the council would want me to, I can certainly contact the attorney for the borough of Fair Lawn and discuss that aspect with them, why they want to do it by interlocal agreement.
Right.
All right, I'll do that.
Great, thanks, Brian.
And then 7C1 is the Lynn Street parking regulations change. That was back on for discussion.
Anything on that, Bernie? Or?
No, we had proposed this, and I think it was one of the things that just kind of slipped through the cracks, and it's coming before us on Lynn Street. They had wanted us to ease the parking regulations for the residents so that they could park on the town. So this is really just formalizing it.
I think since the last meeting, we did get a definitive yes from the Citizen Safety Advisory Committee, and also the engineering department sent a survey letter out to 19 residents. We did get response from 7 of the property owners, 5 in favor and 2 opposed. So the vast majority were in favor.
When I read it, it made so much sense to me. How many other streets are there that haven't asked for this change but would be similarly affected? I mean, shouldn't we take care of them all at the same time?
It would be those affected by commuter parking.
Right, like at the top of the Glenwood Hill in Hohokus.
Chris, maybe you can address, do we have other
Are you still there?
other streets that would be affected the same way that Lynn Street is affected by the commuter parking?
Good evening again. Commuter parking is a problem that pops up periodically in the village, most notably in locations near bus stops. The way it's been addressed by the village is a neighborhood, a group of residents finds cars parked in front of their homes throughout the whole day objectionable. We then implement, if the area being considered all agrees, an ordinance restricting parking similar to what is on Lynn Street right now. That's worked. This is one of the first occasions where a street residents have come back to us and said, it's working so good, it's harming us because we're getting ticketed. The situation that was brought to our attention is families that have multiple drivers, multiple cars, and the car shuffle that has to occur in the morning when people get up, go to school, go to work, and so forth. By providing a 3-hour window, it gives those residents an ability to put a car on the street, clear the driveway, let the next person go out, let them get ready for their day, whatever they may be doing, and then go out to the street, get in the car, and go. Would it be necessary to address this at every street? I'd recommend not. Let's let the residents, if they find they have a problem, come to us, and then we could prepare an ordinance for your consideration.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Chris.
So we're good on Lynn Street for next meeting today.
All right, review of the June 12th agenda. Heather, please.
Okay, yes. We have a few proclamations. We're going to honor Jacques Carlo for his service to the Village of Ridgewood, recognize the Ridgewood Crew Team, and proclaim Ridgewood Crew Day in Ridgewood, and honoring Carrie Huntington for service to the Village of Ridgewood Public Schools. We have the ordinance introduction for the vehicles and traffic for parking on Lynn Street. We have public hearings on vehicles and traffic for closing of certain streets, the capital ordinance for various improvements at the Ridgewood train station, and establishing the cap bank. We have the presentation and the public hearing on the 2013 budget, and then the resolution to adopt the budget. The regular resolutions include waiving the 4th of July vendor fees, which is an annual resolution for the vendors who give a percentage of their profits to the committee, granting permission to the fireworks company for fireworks display, approve liquor license renewals, again an annual resolution, award extraordinary unspecifiable service contract for Kelt Innovations for Ridgewood Water, award extraordinary unspecifiable service contract for grading pool damaged electric service reconstruction, awarding a contract for horticultural supplies, awarding a contract under state contract for network and printer equipment for Hewlett-Packard, awarding contract under state contract for computer and server equipment for Dell Marketing, awarding contract under state contract for computer and networking equipment for CDW Government, Inc., authorizing agreements with local health agencies, declaring property surplus for the police department vehicles, declaring property surplus for the Parks Department vehicle, authorizing placement of a rock sign at Irene Habernickel Family Park. We have appointments of the village attorney, the village labor attorney, the village bond attorney, appointing a representative to the Open Space Trust Regional Committee, which is an annual appointment, appointing community development representative, again an annual appointment, appointing members to the planning board, appointing village council members as liaisons to various boards and committees, which is an annual appointment. In addition, we have rescinding the award of contract to environmental renewal, awarding an extraordinary unspecifiable service for the removal and processing of tree stumps, approving a change order number 1 for the roof replacement of the Ridgewood Water Company, declaring property surplus for the backhoe for parks, declaring property surplus for water pollution control facility vehicle, and the extraordinary unspecifiable service for the water pollution control facility lift pump. Do you want any of these off of the consent agenda? No? Okay.
Thank you. Manager's report?
Yes, Mayor, just a couple items. First item is the 2013 paving list, what we now see as our priority. Obviously, it would take a miracle for all the funding to get through the whole 15, but that's where we stand in terms of what we'll target. Some of the, I think 2 of the streets are involved with DOT, Department of Transportation funding. Some are funding that, or are paving that is completing a job where the gas company has torn up and paved one half of the street and we're completing the other half. Most of the paving is 2012 capital that's already been approved by the council. We will be coming to you for 2013 capital shortly, so there may be additional streets that we can still pull in this year once that capital is approved. So that gives you a list just in case someone calls up and says, where's my street stand?
This is great. Can we put this on the website?
It's probably best if we put maybe the top 9, 10, 11 on the website. There's no guarantee. When we actually get around to doing the paving, Chris may find that number 4 and number 11 are going to be the best combination to do at the same time. So I guess we could do it as a potential priority paving list or something like that.
It's something, I mean, obviously this list would make some folks happy and other folks not so happy, but I think it's important just to let everybody know, because I'm sure we all get questions about this.
If all goes well and all the funding's there, then yes, we'll get something on. Second item, and I may have already answered this individually, but there was a question on several vehicles that we were declaring surplus, and 3 of those had actually been flooded during the storms, and they just absolutely were not even repairable, and we were getting FEMA reimbursement to some extent. Another question that came up was, are we clocking hours of use, not just mileage? These older vehicles did not have that capability. Our newer vehicles do have, so that is being tracked going forward. Next item is, I think the budget newsletter is in the mail. I haven't heard anybody. I think we've got some people that have already received it, and hopefully everyone will have it by Friday. June 12th is the budget hearing. We've been advertised in the newspaper, so we've got all the information is out there. Fourth item, I didn't know if you wanted to add. Okay, I'll make a comment just on the ADA ramp. The New Jersey DEP State Historical Preservation Office, they're actually accepting.
Would agree to the offer made by the previous rep last year, which was a free loan of 1 chair for the month of June and a discount thereafter, and he did agree to that. Of course, there was no meeting last week, and now it's the 5th. He's out of town this week, which is why I'm here instead of him, but he said that either Monday or Tuesday, if you wanted it, he would bring it at no charge. His office is in Cedar Grove, $10.10. I don't know if that includes tax, but...
And just so everybody knows, give a little background, we've been talking for the last couple of years now about making Graydon accessible for folks that have mobility challenges. The council settled on a ramp as the means by which it would serve the greatest population, and it serves different folks with different mobility challenges, including seniors with arthritis, people in wheelchairs. We looked at a lift that didn't seem to make sense, at least as a first step. The Mobi chair is, we had a presentation last year. It's a chair that could help part of the population. Those that, somebody for instance who might be quadriplegic and has no access to the water, it would allow them to go into the water and float with the assistance of somebody. It wouldn't serve everybody, obviously, those that want to swim, those are able to swim, but it would serve, it presumably could serve some members of our community. So it's something we've looked at, and we'll look at it again. Thank you. Hey. Good evening.
Good evening. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Mr. Mayor, could you clarify what you said prior to Ms. Ringel's comments? Are you suggesting that people that have commented so far on the allegations about Mr. Ritchie should stop making comments? Are you trying to suggest there should be no more public comments on this?
Not at all. Not at all. I was talking about the council. Public can say anything, question. I'm talking about in terms of an issue that we deal with. It might make sense for everyone involved to have a third party look at the issue. That's all I was saying. But you're more than welcome to say, ask anything. Absolutely.
I just wanted to clarify that because it certainly sounded that way when you said
not at all.
Allegations being made or comments being made.
No, I think it would inform the conversation to have a third party look at it, presumably. But
well, in my opinion, that would have been the first thing to do, and I think you know that. I mean, I submitted letters to both newspapers. I think it was outrageous the way this was handled, and I think that now that all of this has been said, I even saw this very sketchy anonymous letter. All of these allegations were made by you, and now you're suggesting it should go private. What has been said publicly can't now go private, and that's what I want to say.
sure, that's not what I said at all. This absolutely should be a public discussion, and I invite it, and I've invited it since the beginning. But there are a lot of questions to be asked. For instance, we received today some invoices that go back 10 years. And so now there are a lot of things that we need to look at. And I'm just saying that rather than the councils put this on the agenda every week, it might benefit us to have a third party look at it.
I think I can still speak because you're responding to me even
Sure.
though I had walked away. All of that should have been done, gathering facts and information, not today, but prior to this coming up at all. This is really bad government, in my opinion.
Good evening.
Good evening. Scott McCann, 450 Linwood Avenue. I haven't been able to find the tape of last week, but I've seen some articles and I've talked to some people. You've heard me say that the price of liberty requires eternal vigilance, and I think this is necessary. I see the fire chief is here tonight. I believe it's the fire chief back there. And I hope that there's a discussion and we get the information as to the reasons why the work was requested to be done on an emergency basis. In 1982, some years after we moved to the village, we had a fire. Fire department could have anything they want as far as I'm concerned. It's tough. And one more thing, we've talked about it. We have a saying in my family, words are like toothpaste. Once you get it out of the tube, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to get it back. The people of this village require, and I think demand, that words be carefully chosen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McCann, I'd like to comment on, if you don't mind. I heard you say that you didn't see the tape, but you did read the paper. I read the paper yesterday too, which said that I had defamed Mr. Ritchie. So I went back. I take that very seriously. I don't think anyone should defame anybody else. I think it's actionable. People get sued for that, and I don't want to be sued for something that I was pretty confident I didn't do. So I did go back and look at the tape. I'm not sure what statement the press was referring to. I said, I've known Mr. Ritchie to be an honorable person. I said, I am not contesting the facts as Mr. Ritchie recited them. And I said, maybe he had a very good reason as he suggests. I then went on to say it was the principle that I was espousing, that we ought not have members of the council, whether it's me, Mr. Ritchie, Mayor, anybody on this council, have a contract with the village while serving on the council. And I said, even if it's legal, now I know it's not legal, but at the time I said, even if it's legal, and that surprised me, it doesn't pass the ethics test. Now, since then, I found it's illegal, and I'm delighted because now I don't have to go. I had suggested
Mr. Rogers, you're shaking your head when he said that it's illegal. Would you comment on that, please?
I had said last week that we should consider an ordinance, perhaps, or at least a rule among the council. I'm saying for anyone on the council to have a contract with the village strikes me, anyway, as a lawyer, as contrary to Section 353. But I did not defame Mr. Ritchie, and I want to be clear, and I wouldn't. I have no reason to do that. So when you say you read the papers, let's not get the facts get in the way of a good story, and that's what we see in the papers and blogs and other things. I wish you had seen the tape.
Mr. Pucciarelli,
Mr. Rogers, could you weigh in, please? Mr. McCann, if you don't mind for a second. Mr. Rogers, would you weigh in on that comment, please?
Well, I think what Mr. Ritchie wants me to weigh in on is the opinion that I gave last June with regard to the resolution that was before the council awarding a $24,000 contract to EXCO. And I'm still of the opinion that doesn't violate the local government ethics law. It doesn't violate our local ordinance. Our ordinance, I think it was left out of the record article today, but our ordinance says that no one should benefit directly or indirectly except for salary or fees established by law or by ordinance or resolution of the council. And that's what we did. And I asked Mr. Ritchie to recuse himself from that. And certainly that was, I think, the opinion that Mr. Ritchie's asking me to comment.
No, my observations are not, I have not read all the articles. I try not to. I've been very busy with some other things that are going on, but I had heard from people who had been there and spoke to me, and I'm not quoting. I'm just talking in specific, not in specifics as to this situation. What I am referring to is words have meanings. And it's like I just said, words are like toothpaste. Once you get them out, it's very, very, very difficult to get them back, if at all. They're out there, or whatever they are, and we should be very careful because I believe that the people who live in this village expect and should demand the same. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, welcome.
How you doing? Ron Forenza, 681 Ellington Road, Ridgewood, New Jersey. I read the newspaper also today, and what I came to a conclusion is, if everybody knew it was illegal, the mayor, the attorney, town manager at the time, the councilwoman who voted for it also, you all should resign. Get the hell out of here. So why break his qualunes over something you guys made a mistake on? It's not Richie didn't make the mistake. He didn't even vote for it. But the town asked him to do a job that they had nobody else to do. They went to the state. He was the only guy certified for the job. They went to him and said, do the job. So if there's an extra $8,000 added on to the job, it's not Richie's fault. It's you guys' fault. You're the one who okayed the original $24,000. So why don't you get your heads together or just all yous leave? That might be the best thing. That's all I have to say on that. Second of all, town garage. We're looking to move the town garage to Glen Rock, and we haven't contacted Glen Rock at the time when we started it. But what we should be looking at is Ridgewood should say, all right, our garage stinks. We need a new garage. But let's say, hey, Glen Rock, we were going to build a garage by you. How about being our partner? How about Milton Park being our partner? The three of us, we got the land. We're going to sell our property. You guys come up with some money, and we'll have a nice garage for all three towns. That's an idea I think you should consider. I have another one. On the, I'll bring it up later.
Thank you for those comments. With respect to your second one, it's an excellent idea. It's something we've talked about, and it's definitely something to explore. Some shared services with one or more towns absolutely makes sense. With respect to the other issue, again, we're going to have a more substantive discussion later. It's not, though, Ron, about just last year, the $8,000. There's over 10 years of a relationship here, and so that's what we need to look at right now. Well, again, that's why I think we need to step back, take a deep breath, and sort of look at the situation for all concerned. I don't think we can forget about it. I think it's incumbent upon us to sort of, find our way through this. I really do, in the interest of good government. So, but thank you. I appreciate it. Good evening. Welcome.
Charles Keim, 124 Richards Road. Just in the interest of future good governance for the Village of Ridgewood, could you all go on record tonight, please, and just say that you will uphold the local government ethics law, which states that no local government officer or employee or member of his immediate family shall have an interest in a business organization or engage in any business transaction or professional activity which is a substantial conflict with the proper discharge of his duties to the public interest. I would like the village attorney, the village manager, and the council to state that that is our policy. On the record. And again, I wasn't here at the meeting last week. I have no interest in this. I just want future conflicts of interest to be prevented by good governance.
I appreciate the question, and I don't want to speak for everyone. I think we agree with it. We actually, the village code, the copy of the village code, which speaks to conflict of interest, which has apparently been law since the 1970s, speaks to that issue. So we're not supposed to have any business interest or...
Can we have the village attorney and the village manager state that they will uphold that in future dealings with contracting for the village? On the record.
I hope you're not implying that I have financial dealings with the village?
No, I'm saying to prevent future conflicts of interest, can we state that this is our policy?
Since the financial disclosure requirements have been in place, which I think has been at least 12 or 13 years, I have filed every single year and met all the requirements.
Do we uphold the local
there's a statutory requirement to complete a form and sign off on a form, and I have done that probably for 15 years, including this year.
So in future, all contracts that the village signs will comply with the local government ethics law? Yes or no?
If I could, they definitely should, and whether or not they have in the past, we're going to take a look at that.
I'm not worried about the past, I'm talking
No,
about the future.
going forward, absolutely. I think we're all committed to that, and that's what we're going to do. But
the village attorney to agree to that?
please, I don't still want
First of
to.
all, again, I'm going to say it one other time, hopefully maybe the last time, that the award that I gave the opinion on for the $24,000 was done in conformance with the local government ethics law and our ordinance. Certainly, my position is to uphold the law and make sure that I advise the council properly. I will continue to do that.
Good evening, welcome.
Lorraine Reynolds, 550 Windermere Avenue, Ridgewood. I saw the tape. I wasn't here. I thought it was disgraceful. But regardless of that, I have a question. I just want to clarify. From what I understand from the tape, there was a $24,000 job. Mr. Ritchie's company was the only one that was state approved. Is that the terminology you use? It was, okay. So you could have gone elsewhere, but it would have cost more money. You decided to go with Mr. Ritchie. You had a discussion with Mr. Rogers. He said it was fine. He abstained from the vote. It was a 4-0, it was unanimous. He did the job. 2 months later, something else happened. Totally, Mr. Ritchie, if you'll respond to this, was this second job totally unrelated to the first? It wasn't like the $24,000, you had installed something and that went down and you had to go fix it and you charged another $8,000. You did the $24,000 job. That $24,000 job needed a resolution from the council because it was over the 17.5. You got the resolution. 2 months later, something else total happened. His phones went down in the fire department. It was an emergency. They called him. He got a purchase order. He did the job. That is normally how things would get done. Is that correct? Because it was $8,000. If it was $18,000, then it would have had to come before the council and get a resolution. Is that correct?
There's a few issues here. One is whether an elected official or appointed official, as the code says, should be doing this type of business with the council. Let me finish if I could.
I mean, that was already decided.
Let me, if I could, because you asked if it's normal practice, so it's not normal practice what we're talking about. It's a unique situation. What happened though, we had this conversation a couple weeks ago, and as I recollected, the initial resolution was for the fire department. And Mr. Ritchie said, no, it was later. That was a month and a half later. I subsequently, though, went back to my emails and found that a May email from Mr. Ritchie that said about the fire department phones going down. And I subsequently have checked with the fire chief. It was in May that the phones went down in the fire department, not in August. So there's some issues that we need to sort of work out around what happened and when. And so that's some of the discrepancy that needs to be sort of worked out here.
I mean, if it was an outside company that was doing two separate jobs, one was over the 17.5 and one was under, they would have only had to have gotten the resolution for the first job, the one that's over the 17.5.
Well, again, it depends. We have this thing called the change order. So if it's the same job, it should be that you have to come back to the council if we're going to increase it. In fact, there was a resolution for the change order that we had a couple of weeks ago to add it because it was considered the same job. Whether there was a glitch in the system, whether it was something else, we don't know, and that's one of the things we need to look into. But it still, begs the question why we needed this extra, $8,000 at the end. Because, again, my recollection, and again, I don't want to put words in the fire chief's mouth, but it was in May that the phones went down. That's what the original resolution was for. So, but again, I don't want to get into the sort of back and forth now. I mean, so they're just issues that we need to sort of resolve here.
Do you want to get the fire chief up here so we could just settle
Well,
this?
I think he's going to come up later.
It was a different,
I don't want to put him on the spot now. I mean, because he's coming up later, but do you
It
feel
just seems like you're lambasting Mr. Ritchie for no reason.
If you could just come up here and just sort of clarify that one point, anything else that you think needs to be clarified. As you know, thank you, Larry, at the May 22nd meeting, we had a discussion about the fire department's needs, the phone technology, when phones went down. This is Chief Van Gore, Fire Department.
Yes, Chief Van Gore, Richard Fire Department. I missed what you were saying.
So the question is, in last year, when the phones went down, wasn't it in May that the phones first?
Yeah, the first time they went down was in May.
And that's when Mr. Ritchie's offered to come in and do the work, put temporary phones in until we got the purchase order and all that.
Yeah, he put temporary phones in April, and then we had to design it, get the purchase order the stuff, and then it was installed in August.
Right. So again, the clarification, there was no emergency in August. It was earlier, and so that's, again, in my recollection was that's why we did the original resolution, up to 24,000.
Well, no, we waited. Once we did the temporary phones, it wasn't a big rush to get the purchase order. So that was done later. That was probably done in August sometime.
Right.
So I'm not sure if it was before or after, but it was sometime in August.
Great. Thank you for your clarification. Anyway. Thank you, Chief.
On a separate note, I have a question. The Valley Hospital is in front of the planning board right now. I'm assuming, in case you didn't know, I am assuming that eventually it will get to council. I know that Mr. Pucciarelli has said he would recuse himself, and I would like to put it on the record that Ms. Houck would recuse herself as well. I wanted to see what you had to say about it.
I don't think there's any reason for me to. I don't understand why I would. I'm just as impartial as everyone else.
Don't you feel like you have a personal involvement with Valley for the last
No different
25
than
years
anyone
of your
else in the
life?
village.
What?
No different than anyone else in the village. I don't accept a salary. I'm not currently involved.
It has nothing to do with
I have
salary.
history
It's
as a
personal
resident.
You have a personal involvement.
Okay.
Lorraine, we can get some counsel and some advice on that. Thanks for your advice.
This actually is a quote from Mr. Pucciarelli. It's actually not a quote. He put it on the patch as a statement when he was running, and he was saying why, if Mr. Forenza had won, why he would have to recuse himself. So he said, this is from, what did he say? Oh, this is from state law about who would have a conflict. No local government officer or employee shall act in his official capacity in any manner were he a member of his immediate family or a business organization in which he has an interest, has a direct or indirect financial or personal involvement that might reasonably be expected to impair his objectivity or independence of judgment. So I think your personal involvement with Valley for the last 25 to 30 years of your life shows that personal involvement. And that I really, truly believe if you say you can be impartial, I think you're lying to yourself.
So in other words, you also agree that Tom Ritchie's personal involvement with Extel would preclude him from doing business with the village?
Nothing to do with the other.
I'm just asking
Okay, let's
if
just-
you
everybody,
therefore
let's do
agree with the
this.
parallel.
Point of order, Gwen.
Why?
Because
Because,
read Robert's Rules of Order, that's why.
okay. Anyway, point was made, thank you. Just so everybody knows, Valley Hospital proposal is on the planning board's agenda. I was there till 11:45 last night.
Me too.
And the timeline right now is there was a effort to get this done by the end of June. I don't know if we're going to succeed with that. But then if it gets passed by the planning board, then it would come back to the council. If it does not get passed by the planning board, it would not come back to the council. So that's where we stand. But